I'm happy to meet with you again. Sometimes it feels like fatigue just appears out of nowhere, but today, together, we'll explore how to reclaim your energy and a sense of ease. Does this sound familiar when an evening show or the news seems to help you unwind, but you wake up feeling completely drained, as if you haven't slept at all? Like your head is full of cotton wool and you don't even have the energy for a cup of tea? You might blame it on age, but often the culprit hides where we least expect it, in our cozy evening ritual in front of the glowing screen. Our wise bodies become more sensitive with age, and what used to go unnoticed can now have a noticeable impact on our well-being. The bright screen light, especially the blue spectrum, literally tricks our brain, making it think it's daytime and suppressing the production of melatonin, our main sleep hormone. This hormone is like the conductor of our internal sleep orchestra. It signals the whole body, time to rest, recover. But the television before bed, it's like a loud trombone bursting into this quiet melody, throwing off the whole rhythm. This bright screen before sleep is like a strong cup of coffee for our brain when it desperately needs peace and quiet. Or imagine a noisy, bustling bazaar in the middle of a quiet night street. That's roughly how television affects our brain, tired from the day. But what if I told you that just one simple change in your evening routine could bring back deep, refreshing sleep, mental clarity in the mornings, and even something completely unexpected? I went through this myself, and I want to share my experience and the stories of other people, just like you. No complicated diets or exhausting exercises, just one small step towards better well-being. I promise, my advice will be simple and accessible to everyone. Stay with me, and I'll tell you how one simple change before bed can be a real gift for your well-being and mental clarity, and what surprising bonus I discovered is number 2. So, the first and most obvious step I took, and perhaps the easiest one to start with, was replacing evening television viewing with reading a regular paper book by the soft light of a bedside lamp. Sounds simple, right? But for many of us, the television in the evening is a habit developed over decades. Like a faithful friend, always there to entertain or distract us from our worries. Think of Margaret. She's 68 years old. She had always loved watching detective series before bed. She said it was her way to switch off her brain, but in reality, her brain wasn't switching off. She tossed and turned for a long time. Her sleep was shallow and intermittent, and in the morning she felt as if she'd been solving complex puzzles all night instead of resting. When her daughter suggested she try reading before bed, Margaret initially dismissed it. How boring. I'm not in a sanatorium. Books are for daytime. Evenings need a screen. She was used to the flickering, the changing images, the background noise. Silence and a static page seemed empty to her. But fatigue was taking its toll, and she decided to give it a try. She took an old paperback novel from the shelf, turned on a small lamp with a warm light. At first, it was unfamiliar. Her thoughts wandered. Her hand reached for the remote. But gradually, the plot captivated her. She read slowly, absorbing the words, imagining the characters. And you know what happened? She didn't even notice her eyes getting heavy, not out of boredom, but from natural tiredness. She simply put the book down and fell asleep, faster than usual. And in the morning she woke up with a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time, a feeling of true rest. Why does this happen? It's all about that melatonin. The soft, warm light from the lamp doesn't suppress its production as much as the bright blue light from the screen. Reading a book, especially one with calm content, soothes the mind, switches it from daily worries to the steady rhythm of the narrative. The brain receives the signal. All is calm. Time to prepare for sleep. It's like a quiet lullaby after a noisy day, whereas television is more like a brisk march that doesn't promote falling asleep at all. Your brain gets the chance to transition smoothly from wakefulness to sleep, like a ship gently entering a calm harbor, not like a boat tossed in a storm. You not only fall asleep faster, but sleep itself becomes deeper, higher quality. You go through all the necessary sleep stages, during which the brain cleans up, sorts information, and the body recovers. And of course, the practical benefits are clear. You fall asleep easier, wake up less often during the night, and feel more refreshed and energetic in the morning. Try swapping the screen for a page for at least a week. Perhaps your sleep will thank you tomorrow morning. And so, once my sleep improved, When I started waking up rested, I noticed something truly surprising, something I hadn't expected at all. That second point I mentioned earlier. It turns out that by freeing my evenings from the screen, I made space not only for rest, but also for awakening my creative side. Yes, you heard correctly. Instead of passively staring at the screen, I sometimes started simply sitting in silence for a few minutes before bed, sometimes doing gentle stretches or just observing my breath. Meet Arthur. He's 72 years old. He always considered himself a practical man, far removed from any creative nonsense. In the evenings, he watched the news or old movies, often fell asleep in front of the TV, and then couldn't get back to sleep for half the night, digesting what he'd seen or just feeling some vague anxiety. He woke up with a heavy head. Ideas for his beloved hobby, woodworking, came less and less often. He felt stuck. When his granddaughter, who enjoys yoga, suggested that instead of watching the news before bed, he just sit quietly and breathe for 10-15 minutes, Arthur scoffed. No way. I'm not going to meditate, not at my age. He was sure it was a waste of time, but his granddaughter was persistent, and he decided to give in so as not to offend her. He sat in his armchair, turned off the TV. The first few evenings were torture. The silence seemed deafening. His brain, out of habit, demanded stimulation. But gradually, he started noticing something else. His shoulders relaxed, his breathing became steadier, and suddenly, completely unexpectedly, in that silence, ideas began to appear. Images of new crafts, solutions to old problems he had long put aside. Thoughts came naturally, easily, without effort. He even started writing them down in a notebook. In the morning, he woke up not only rested, but also with a clear plan for what he would craft that day. He felt inspired again. So, what happened to his, and my, brain? It turns out that when we constantly bombard our brain with external information from the screen, rapid scene changes, sounds, plots, we don't give it a chance to do its internal work. Our brain is naturally wired to process information, connect different thoughts, find unconventional solutions. Scientists call this mode of brain operation the default mode network, DMN. It activates when we aren't focused on an external task, when we let our minds wander freely. Television, however, is like loud music at a party that drowns out all quiet conversations and prevents you from hearing your own thoughts. When you turn off the screen and give your brain silence, it's like opening a window on a quiet summer night, and you start hearing the rustle of leaves, the chirping of crickets, noticing subtle scents. Your brain gets a chance to hear itself, connect disparate pieces of information, find new associations. This is the time when your subconscious can suggest a solution to a problem you struggled with during the day, or present you with a completely new idea. Furthermore, reducing stimulation before bed decreases the production of stress hormones like cortisol, which also contributes to mental clarity and creativity. So the benefit here isn't just pre-sleep tranquility, but also the potential return of inspiration, solving long-standing problems, and improving memory and concentration during the day. Give your brain some quiet time before sleep, and it might surprise you with its own stories, ideas, and solutions. It truly can be the most unexpected and pleasant gift. But you know, this awakening of ideas and mental clarity after a quiet evening was just the beginning. I started noticing other pleasant changes, especially in how my mind worked during the day. Specifically, it affected my memory and ability to concentrate. And here too, there's a simple alternative to evening TV. Try listening to calm music, an audiobook, or a podcast on a topic that interests you. Think of Eleonora. She's 65 years old. She began to notice that she was increasingly forgetting where she put her keys, why she came into a room, and missing important details in conversations. Getting old is no fun, she sighed, habitually settling down in front of the TV with some talk show in the evening. She thought these were just inevitable age-related changes. Her son, seeing how worried she was, suggested she try audiobooks. Mom, you used to love reading, but your eyes get tired. Here, you just listen. Eleonora was skeptical at first. Listen? That sounds boring. No pictures, nothing. She felt that information wouldn't be absorbed without visuals, but she decided to give it a chance. She chose an audio version of a favorite classic novel. At first, it was unfamiliar. Her mind tried to wander, but the narrator's voice was pleasant. the story familiar and engaging. She closed her eyes and let her imagination paint the pictures. Imagine her surprise when the next day she found she remembered all the plot details, character names, twists and turns perfectly, much better than after watching a movie the night before. And after a couple of weeks, she noticed that she was more focused during the day too. She remembered her shopping list better, didn't forget planned phone calls, and could hold her attention longer during conversations or while reading the newspaper. Why does this happen? Firstly, as we've discussed, ditching the TV improves sleep quality. And it's during deep sleep that our brain consolidates memories, transferring information from short-term to long-term storage. Poor interrupted sleep disrupts this process. Secondly, watching television itself often overloads our working memory. Rapid scene changes, numerous characters, parallel storylines, commercials, all require constant information processing, but don't encourage deep absorption. The brain operates in a surface scanning mode. Compare it to a computer with too many tabs open. Everything starts to slow down and freeze. Listening to an audiobook or calm music, however, requires a different type of attention, deeper and more focused. You follow the thread of the narrative or melody. Your imagination is actively engaged. This trains the neural networks responsible for concentration and memory. It's more like carefully laying out a game of solitaire, each card in its place, attention focused on the process. The brain isn't overloaded with visual noise and can better process and retain information. So the practical benefit for you is improved short-term and long-term memory, increased concentration in daily tasks, and simply enriching your inner world through imagination. Let your ears do the work instead of your eyes before bed. Your brain might reward you with better memory and greater mental clarity during the day. And of course, when your mind works better, when you think clearly and remember well, that in itself brings more peace. But giving up evening TV also affects our emotional balance more directly, helping us cope with what so often disturbs our sleep and joy in life, anxiety. Another very important consequence that I and many others felt almost immediately is a noticeable reduction in anxiety levels and an improvement in overall mood, especially in the mornings. What can you do instead of watching TV to achieve this? Try keeping a journal and writing down your thoughts, worries, or simply a few things you are grateful for from the day. Listen to the story of David. He's 70 years old. He had always been an anxious person. In the evening, he absolutely had to watch the news to stay informed. But afterwards, he couldn't fall asleep for a long time, replaying alarming stories in his head, worrying about the future, his children, his health. His sleep was restless, and he greeted the morning with a feeling of heaviness and irritation. His doctor advised him to try writing down his worries on paper before bed instead of watching the news. David initially laughed. A diary? That's for girls. What would I even write? It seemed like a silly and useless activity. But the doctor insisted, and David decided to try, albeit without much enthusiasm. He took an old notebook and simply started writing down everything that bothered him, from world news to the creaky door in the garden. He wrote without censoring, just pouring everything onto the paper, and to his surprise, he felt relief, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Then he decided to add the doctor's other suggestion and write down a couple of things he was grateful for that day: a tasty dinner, a call from his grandson, sunny weather. Gradually, he noticed that falling asleep became easier. Anxious thoughts no longer swirled in his head with such force. They were left on the paper. And in the morning, he started waking up, calmer. He was less irritated by trivial things, felt more balanced. Why does this work? Television, especially news programs or dramatic series, is often filled with negative, anxiety-provoking information. Our brain, especially in the evening when defenses are weaker, is very susceptible to this. We involuntarily start chewing over these problems, projecting them onto ourselves, which increases stress hormone levels and prevents relaxation. Imagine your worries are stones in a backpack you carry all day. Watching disturbing news before bed is like adding several more heavy boulders to that backpack and trying to sleep with it on. No wonder sleep is poor. But when you write down your worries, you symbolically take these stones out of the backpack and carefully place them on a shelf. You acknowledge their existence, give them space, but free your mind from them for sleep. The practice of gratitude, in turn, shifts the focus from negative to positive. We learn to notice the good, even in small things, which in itself reduces stress and improves mood. The brain receives the signal, not everything is bad, there are good things too. This helps balance our emotional state. The benefit for you is reduced anxiety before sleep, calmer and deeper sleep, improved mood in the mornings, and developing a more positive outlook on life. Transfer your thoughts from your head to paper before bed. Perhaps it will help you leave worries outside the bedroom door and greet the morning with greater ease and calm. When anxiety recedes, when we become calmer and more balanced, it inevitably reflects on our relationships with our closest loved ones. And here lies another important, though not always obvious, benefit of ditching the evening screen: the opportunity to strengthen that connection. There's an aspect we don't immediately think about, but which is very important for our emotional comfort, especially in later life. Try replacing watching TV together with a quiet conversation, discussing the day, or simply being present together in silence, but without the screen. Here's an example of Susan and George, both in their early 70s. They had been together for almost half a century. Their evening ritual was unchanging: dinner, then each to their own armchair in front of the television. Sometimes they watched the same thing, sometimes different programs in different rooms. There was hardly any conversation. They loved each other, but over time, a kind of wall of silence, filled with the noise of the TV, had grown between them. They felt distant, but attributed it to the long years of marriage. One day, their adult daughter, visiting, noticed this disconnect and gently suggested they try spending at least half an hour before bed without the TV, just talking. The idea seemed strange to them. What would we talk about? "We know everything about each other already," George said. It'll be awkward, thought Susan, but they decided to try. The first few evenings were indeed a bit awkward. The silence felt thick. But then they started sharing small things. Something interesting they read in the newspaper, how the neighbors were doing, something funny their grandchild said on the phone. They reminisced about old trips together, funny stories from their youth. They started listening to each other again, not just hearing the background noise of the TV, but listening to the voice of their loved one. They noticed they understood each other's moods better. The feeling of closeness and warmth returned. And falling asleep became easier, not just because there was no screen, but because the oppressive feeling of being lonely together was gone. Why does this happen? We often think that watching TV together is spending time together, but in reality, it's most often parallel activity. Each person is immersed in the screen. There's no real interaction. It's like sitting in the same room, but back to back. A live conversation, even about the simplest things, is an opportunity to turn and face each other, see their eyes, feel their emotions, share thoughts. This creates a real emotional connection, which is so important for our mental well-being. The feeling of being heard, understood, and valued is a powerful stress reliever, especially at our age, when the support of a loved one becomes even more crucial. Spending quiet time together without distractions helps tune our inner rhythms to each other, creates a sense of security and comfort, which directly affects sleep quality and overall well-being. The practical benefits are obvious: strengthening relationships, reducing feelings of loneliness, improving mutual understanding, and creating a warm, supportive atmosphere at home. Replace the cold light of the screen with the warmth of human connection before bed. Even 15 to 20 minutes of quiet conversation can be the best sleep aid and a true balm for your relationship. And this newfound warmth and communication, this feeling of closeness, it gives strength and a desire to live more fully. But you know what else an evening without television gives us? It gives us time. Time not only for others, but also for ourselves, for those forgotten joys and hobbies that nourish our soul. And the last, but no less important point, giving up evening screen time frees up time and mental space to return to yourself, to your long-forgotten hobbies, or simply to be in silence with your thoughts. Try using this time to engage in a calm hobby that brings you pleasure: knitting, solving crosswords, drawing, assembling puzzles, listening to old records, or simply looking through photo albums. Let me tell you about Helen. She's 69 years old. In her youth, she loved knitting. Her sweaters and shawls were worn by the whole family, but then came work, children, worries. Knitting took a back seat. After retiring, she somehow unnoticeably got hooked on evening TV shows. She said she was tired after the day, and there was no energy left for hobbies. But deep down, she felt a kind of emptiness, dissatisfaction. She missed that quiet, creative process. One day, after hearing conversations about the harm of TV before bed, she decided to conduct an experiment. She put the remote away and took out a basket with knitting needles and yarn that her children had once given her from the closet. Her hands remembered. It was a bit clumsy at first, but gradually her fingers started moving on their own. The rhythmic clicking of the needles, the soft wool in her hands. It was so calming. She became completely immersed in the process, forgetting about time and the television. That evening, she knitted very little, but felt immense satisfaction, as if she had returned to something important, to a part of herself. Since then, evening knitting has become her new ritual. She noticed that it not only helps her relax and sleep better, but also gives her a sense of purpose, joy from creating something with her own hands. She felt like herself again. Why is this so important? Passively consuming content from the screen, although it seems like rest, often leaves us with a feeling of mental chewing gum and inner emptiness. It's like fast food for the soul, quick, easy, but not nourishing. Engaging in a beloved activity that requires concentration, fine motor skills, or simply immersion in the process. That's like preparing a delicious and healthy home-cooked meal with love. It requires some effort, but nourishes, delights, and brings deep satisfaction. Such activities activate different areas of the brain than watching TV. They promote cognitive function, improve mood through the release of happiness hormones, like dopamine upon achieving a goal, and reduce stress through monotonous, rhythmic movements, like knitting or sorting puzzle pieces. This is time when you can be alone with yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, without drowning them out with external noise. It's an opportunity to reconnect with what truly interests and is dear to you. The practical benefits here are stress reduction, increased self-esteem, cognitive function development, finding inner peace and harmony, and the joy of creation. Gift this last hour of the day not to the screen, but to yourself, to what your soul loves or your hands know how to do. This can become your personal source of calm, joy, and inspiration. So, as you can see, simply giving up the evening screen can trigger a whole chain of positive changes, from deep sleep and an unexpected surge of creative energy to improved memory, peace of mind, warmer relationships, and the joy of returning to beloved activities. And it all starts with one small step. 1. You have lived a long, rich life, accumulated invaluable experience and wisdom. You know the value of real things, health, peace, the warmth of human connection. And you, more than anyone, deserve to greet each new day with a clear head, a calm heart, and a sense of fullness of life. Don't demand heroic feats or drastic changes from yourself right away. Try taking one small step today. Replace half an hour in front of the screen with reading, conversation, a favorite hobby, or simply silence. Observe how you feel. You might be pleasantly surprised by how much this simple change can offer, including that unexpected second point, the awakening of your inner ideas. Remember, taking care of yourself is not selfishness, but an expression of wisdom and love for life. Take that small step today, for your own good, for your peace and joy. You deserve it. Until next time, and take care.